Hi everyone! To celebrate the upcoming release of LEGO Dreamzzz Season 2, I have here Mr. Oz's space car, set number 71475. I'm going to build this set without the instructions, and I'll build both variants. So let's get started. So the set comes with 3 numbered bags, numbered 1, 2, and 3. And we do get a sticker sheet, which is in good condition, thankfully. We also get this relatively thick instruction manual with some, like the colors you see at the top are not the same, so I guess that helps separate the 3 options or the 3 builds. But I will not be looking at this instruction manual until at least the build is done. I will, however, be looking at the 3D view for each building phase so that I'm able to just figure out how the pieces go together. I'm just going to point out the interesting pieces that I see before I move on with the build, and I'll start with the minifigures, of course. I see here this blaster piece. There's a bunch of pieces in this reddish orange, which is not the same as red. I'll see if there's an orange piece here to compare with. Nothing here springs to mind, but basically this is between red and orange. I've covered it in other videos, so check those out if you haven't already. There's a spider web in what looks like gunmetal gray. I'm going to skip ahead and show you the figures right now. You have Mr. Oz and Jayden from bag 1, as well as Albert from bag 2, and there are no figures in bag 3. So here is Jayden along with the other minifigures in the set, Mr. Oz as well as Albert, and Jayden is not to be confused with Jan, who is another character from LEGO Dreamzzz. So let's look at the characters as usual from all angles. Dr. Oz has a nice mustache underneath this hair and headpiece, and he has no alternative expression, unlike Jayden, who does have one. I'll see if I can remove this piece here to show you the print underneath. Yeah, so here he is. And of note, there is no classic space logo print on the torso, but it's still a nice one to get in pearl gold nonetheless. Jayden has some very nice printing on the back of his pajamas. No side printing for any of them, or arm printing. It looks like I put on the head backward for Albert, because he has a print on the front. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's another look with the correct orientation for Albert's face. Notice that the Mr. Oz head has this interesting form of glasses with an additional lens here. I'm not quite sure what that is, but if you watch the show, you might be able to find that out. And just for fun, I'll make him young again with Jayden's hair, and I'll give Jayden the beard just to see what that will look like, because this is Dreamzzz after all, and you can mix between dreams and reality, and that's the nice thing about LEGO minifigures. And here's what the very transparent helmet piece would look like on Albert, for example. Or sorry, Dr. Oz. It looks kind of like a fish in a fishbowl, which is pretty funny. So that's nice to see. And here's what Albert looks like with hair. Alright, enough goofing around. Let's put back the shoulder piece for Mr. Oz. So this one, by the way, comes with this print of an hourglass. It's very hard to take this off once you've put it on. I've had to use a brick separator, literally, like, and this is after screwing the head on. Well, yeah, so I'll show you what I mean by that. Basically, in this gap, once I try to wiggle it, I have to use a brick separator to pry his head off, which is not ideal. So if you assemble this figure, decide we want to use this or not, because it's going to be difficult, not impossible, but difficult to reverse your decision later. Oh yeah, there, that mustache there looks great. Jayden, sometimes he's like asleep, so it's nice to get that expression for a minifigure, and of course Albert with his fishbowl helmet. So these are the 3 main figures that you get in the set. They're all very well done. The printing is crisp and so on. But in addition to these figures, you also get this bad guy who basically takes over Jayden. Let's take a closer look at this guy. So this thing has 4 articulatable legs. They go up and down, you can spin them around. And it has these translucent purple wings. And it has brains outside of its head for extra spookiness. And these brains are actually printed on a standard minifigure head. So you could take this piece and you put it on one of the minifigures and turn them into like a brain zombie if you want. So yeah, it's an interesting and maybe frightening character, maybe too frightening, depending on the age and maturity of your child. This piece here is going to be useful, not just for LEGO Dreamzzz, but I'm sure many other themes as well. Comment down below if you know what I'm talking about. So, interesting piece to get, and you do get a spare piece, because with all these tiny pieces, LEGO always gives you one extra. So that's pretty interesting. And then one thing that I tried before is, can this thing actually carry Jayden? Let's remove the wrench, but like if Jayden is sleeping, like as he often does, can we actually carry this thing like they show on the box, or is it false advertising? Let's find out. I have to orient these in the right direction, kind of like you know those machines that like grab things except you never win? Those claw machines. Let's see, can we attach Jayden here? Looks like the answer is yes. I've been able to do it. No cheating or anything like that. If this was not possible, or if you find this difficult to do, these things here are clips, so you can actually clip the hand of a minifigure from the back, so they can be like holding on, and basically you capture them in that way. But actually you can make the bad guy like just hold this and go away. Now with the figures and the bad guy out of the way, let's move on to the speed build, and then finally I'll tell you my thoughts on the set. For Bag 2, I think the most impressive piece, the most noteworthy piece, is this windshield right here. It's transparent, but it's very sparkly as well. You can see it glittering. It feels very appropriate for space, which is like the sub-theme of Dreamzzz for this set. And yeah, so it's like you can see it's barely transparent or translucent. Let's have a look at like a figure in there. Yeah, he's barely visible, barely. So that's an interesting and different look. I wish it was a little bit more transparent so you could see inside more easily, but this is not bad. Nice piece to get. Now in this bag we get a bunch of stickers, so I'll try to apply them all and get them over with. I will be using the brick separator to help, but keep in mind it's not included in the set. You'll have to get it separately or use another piece like this one that does kind of the same thing, or some other piece from your own collection, or tweezers, whatever works for you. Alright, we're done with the first part of the build, which is this nice car here. It is basically it's an 8 stud wide vehicle. The wheels are a little bit fatter than that. It looks pretty good. I like the color scheme, and it's a little bit different from what we get with the licensed Speed Champions sets. So we have here the Dreamzzz license plate, reference to LEGO Classic Space, and of course this, I believe it's a unique windshield, at least for the time being. The driver gets to sit really low. Mr. Oz can drive without having to take off his stuff. We might need to put away his blaster. Yeah, there we go. So, and the hood fits on. Sorry, the windshield fits on with the driver inside. So, pretty nice to get. You won't be able to see the driver very well, but you can kind of see the hair right there. So yeah, he is in there. He is in there. This is to protect, like when you're in space, you don't want completely transparent windshields, which kind of makes sense. Alright, so now that we're done with bag 2, and by the way, like if you like this car, if you think this car is worthy in of itself, then the set is interesting for you to get. You might want to leave off the stickers if you don't particularly care about space, but other than that, it's a perfectly nice car. But of course, the main attraction of this set is all the stuff that you get in bag 3. And here, as the box suggests, you can build the set in one of 2 ways. So I'm going to build this one first, just because I want to stay on the ground level, and then I'm going to take to the skies with this other build right here. I'll just comment right now that so many pieces of this set are these tiny 1x1 pieces, or these pins. I've seen a lot more of these in this set, like these tiny pieces, compared to other sets I've reviewed recently. Oh, I spoke too soon. There's another bag. Yet more small pieces. That's why looking at only price to part ratio is kind of misleading for sets like these, because you get tons of these tiny parts that are worth like 1 or 2 cents each. But this sticker in particular was not cut very well. You see that there's a lot more cut from this side than that side, so keep that in mind when applying these stickers if you want them to be fully symmetrical. Same thing for this one here. Like you can see that the space logo is not completely centered. I try to offset the sticker as much as possible in the opposite direction to make it appear more centered from a distance at least. This last sticker here is actually clear backed. Unlike the previous stickers, which are like a little bit translucent, this one is completely transparent. I've never seen a combination of transparent and translucent or clear back stickers in a single sticker sheet before, so I guess that's something new. For clear back stickers, it's very important to apply them on correctly the first time without any air bubbles or anything like that. Yeah, this one's small, but you can already see it's kind of a pain to make it look nice. Which is why in general I don't like clear back stickers. I don't like stickers in general, but clear back stickers are even worse. It already looks old. Oh well. Finally, we're done with this sticker sheet, thankfully. Alright, so now it's time for the main transformation. I'm not completely done with the build, but you'll see why I chose to stop here in just a moment. So first I built these things here with the hard plastic tires. And we have this car here. So I pre-built as much of this as I can. Now it's time to do the transformation. First of all, we need to take the wheels out, including the white pins that connect them. A little bit hard to remove those. Now we can attach these pieces here that it should fit perfectly, these components. I'm building this without the instructions, but I was able to figure this out from the various 3D views. Just gotta align these pluses properly. And we'll attach this turret kind of thing on top. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Not really any suspension. I'll talk more about the car and this build overall in a moment, but let's use the parts that we scavenged from the car in order to finish building the tiny little rocket. You see here it's using the wheels that come off the car, so it all fits together. Alright, so in the official build they don't really cover these exposed pins, but I think that they should be covered in something like this. Unfortunately, we don't get a piece for the other side, so we have to get that from your own collection, or just accept it. We've got a bunch of extra pieces here, and this wrench that can be used as an accessory, like any of the minifigures. Alright, so let's take a look at the builds. I'll start with this one here, this tiny little spaceship thing. Using the wheels and the tires in this way for the engines is just so genius, and the way they use this bar piece here to connect the wheels together, that's just next level. I've never seen any building technique like this before. And again, I didn't see the instructions, but looking at the remaining pieces, this is the only way that makes sense for it to be put together. And then we have our little dude right here, who is in charge of flying this thing. Yeah, that looks really nice. This can spark lots of imaginative play. And yeah, you have a helmet so you're protected from space. Of course, real-life space vehicles are a lot more sophisticated than this, but for a kid's toy, it looks pretty proper, and it's done with a minimal number of pieces, although I wish these stickers could have been better executed. But good attempt nonetheless, and I really appreciate this building technique. And we get these, I don't know if these are meant to represent wheels at the bottom, or are they just like there as landing pads? Oh well, use your imagination, it can be whatever you want. So that's pretty cool. Looking at the car itself, so just move the picture pieces out of the way and bring the car into focus. So now the car has went from something relatively simple and mundane, something you might expect to see on a city street, to something a lot more intimidating. So there's no suspension here, but it still looks pretty cool. The hard plastic wheels don't roll all that well, but there's 6 of them, so some of them will roll when you push it, but you might notice that the middle wheel is not turning. So that's a little bit of a miss, in my opinion. Turning is not that great either, but this might be better suited for a carpet rather than a flat surface like this one. Now, we added this turret here. Well, it looks like the whole thing comes off more easily, but it's meant to be just like this thing with the pin that comes off, because this is what the car starts off as. Like when you build it from the first 2 bags and you add this stuff here, you attach it with that pin, and it's a really good design because they allow it to rotate, and then you can rotate these black things, these black pieces, to shoot these studs out at your enemies. Let's try to see if we can take out this bad guy right here. So let's give it a go. And by the way, like when you shoot these, there's a good chance that you'll never see them again. Okay, let's see. Okay, so shooting, I think I'm hitting him, but like not, oh, I'm out of rounds. Okay, well, you get the idea. These went all over the place. I'm gonna try collecting them. You do get a few extra in the set, so if you lose one, it's not the end of the world entirely, but they're not, yeah, like, if you're gonna give this to a child, give them rules on, like, you can only play with this in this room, you have to clean up. I counted 24 studs or however many. You need to give me all 24 of them when you're done playing with this, otherwise it's just gonna be a nightmare. So if you're giving this to a child, definitely tell them either you don't play with the stud shooter, or you play with it, but you have to follow the rules, because these could be a choking hazard if you have an even younger child or a pet or anything like that. So be careful with these. Yeah. So it can rotate the full 360 degrees. Here's a look at the car itself. I like the way they did the lights here. It's pretty nice, and because they used light colors underneath the transparent brick, it looks really nice. I like the way they did the exhaust here with these palisade bricks on the underside of them. So that's pretty neat. There's a nice mix of studded and studless textures on the car, and then we still have full access to the cockpit inside, although this is not the best color for a spacecraft. It's more of what you would find in a civilian vehicle, but hey, it's Dreamzzz, use your imagination, it's all good. Alright, so we have looked at this build that is really like down to Earth or down to Mars. I'm sure it's a useful terrain vehicle. Actually, if I... yeah, so to make these, I just realized something. Like these wheels, like they're adjustable in height, so you can make them such that they're more likely to roll by just not pressing them all the way in. Just something to keep in mind. It's very hard to find that balance though. So as I was saying, this is a down to Earth or down to Mars set. It's good for terrain missions. We have like a little bit of air support with this thing. What if you want to take to the skies and have the focus be on the sky and then a little helper for the terrain? Well, you could do just that by doing the other alternative build. So I'm going to take this apart and rebuild it into this thing here. Well, I should have mentioned that there's this nice satellite piece here used in that build, the terrain build. It's always going to be used on the terrain build, and it has that nice color of the windshield. We have like this claw piece right here, so these would have been attached to that build previously. So I see a lot of the similarities between this, this half and this half of this build. Let me try to see if I can show you rather than tell you. Basically, if we cut this thing in half, we get something that's very similar to what we want in the end. That's pretty interesting to observe. Yeah, so we don't need to rebuild these from scratch, which is why if you're going between one and the other, you don't really need to take apart everything and rebuild it. You could if you want, if you enjoy doing that, but it is not a requirement, since we've already pre-built a lot of this stuff, because these things are going to go right around here for this car. We do have to change up a few things at the bottom though, but that's okay. Again, a lot of this construction here can stay the same, minimal changes, so no need to take this apart. Just change what is attached to it. And apparently this satellite can be used either as part of the vehicle, or it can be held by a minifigure, and both of these are shown on the box. So it allows for imaginative play, which I like. Alright, so it's time to finish up this car. These wings fit surprisingly well with minimal gapping. And then we have this thing at the top. And of course the massive engines that conveniently go into these holes here. Alright, we are done with the build. Let's take away all the extra pieces from this particular build. Here they are just for reference. I might be missing one or two pieces, but I think it's pretty faithful overall to what the design should be. So we've already taken a brief look at the car itself and the previous model, this one here. Now let's take a look at this one. So here the stud shooters are less easy to shoot, and in my opinion it's actually a good thing. That's still possible, that stud went very far. So yeah, you rotate these and turn them to shoot the studs very, very far away. That's really fun to play with. So yeah, we get this really nice look from the rear. All these plastic tires being used as thrusters. Looks pretty proper from the top as well. Yeah, this looks like something you would want to have to fight the bad guys, because it has lots of powers, lots of things that it can do. And we have this arm here. So can it reach the ground? Yes, it can. So that's pretty nice. You could have here somebody operating it. Yeah, basically reaching all the way to the ground. And then let's say we want to pick up this wrench. Fits in, and then it can go to the operator almost. So yeah, if I want to use this wrench to like scratch my head, I can't do that, but it's, oh yeah, almost there. This thing can turn in every so which way. This is ratcheted. This can go up and down. This of course can move. This can move, and this whole thing is at an angle, so it can move around towards the bottom here, but not so much towards the top because it's blocked by this piece. So nice articulation regardless. This thing here can move up and down, but not that much. Can rotate, but that doesn't really do anything. Already talked about the stud shooters. The wings they're not really that adjustable. You can adjust them just a little bit, like so, based on this piece here. So I guess that's something. It doesn't really make a lot of impact to me. The windshield here that's translucent makes more sense when this thing is in space. It's flying. You don't want the sun's powerful rays to enter into the driver's compartment, which is now known as the cockpit. So this makes more sense up there. But then you're wondering, why is this thing completely transparent? So that's something to think about. So yeah, we could have one person up here on the turret, another person driving. It's expected to be Dr. Oz since it's his vehicle, or Mr. Oz. I don't know if he got his PhD yet. And then this guy can try to escape from the bad guy on this tiny little rover. There's not a lot of excitement with this one. I mean, it gets the job done. It's very minimalistic. It's almost entirely all Technic with only 2 system parts on it. It rolls very well though, because of its small size. So I would suggest, like, if you get this set, try to make this look a bit nicer. Add your own pieces. Basically use these extra studs or modify this a little bit. I think it's possible to do that with the pieces included in this set. Make some changes and make it look more interesting. Well, actually we see on the box a suggestion that's not shown in the 3D view of basically taking this whole thing and putting it there. So just take this and dump it here. I don't quite know how they attached it. I'd have to study that more, but basically this looks a lot more interesting to me. Reminds me of like a crane. So just to clarify what I'm talking about this particular image right here. So let's see if we can replicate this just from the box. I'm sure there's a way. I think this is the simplest way of doing it, just removing this pin here and attaching it here at an angle. It's not super well held together because this is only held by 2 studs. You have to modify this a little bit to make it hold itself better, and it does not rotate either. It's fixed in place, but the whole thing can rotate pretty easily, so it's not a big drawback in my opinion. So let's find that. Let's find Albert. I know he doesn't like being called a monkey, so let's put Albert here. Okay, yeah. And now, conveniently, because this bad guy is built out of a spider web piece with a clip, you can hold the bad guy in the air. Can we? Okay, it looks like this bad guy is heavy. He has a very big brain, so you got to balance things out to hold him properly. But yeah, it is doable. So this pose that's seen on the box, you can replicate it approximately. You actually are not forced to have this sitting on 2 studs. You just make this modification that I show here. Basically remove these pieces that were there before, and you add these pieces here. I know there's a color mismatch, but these are the pieces that were left over. Maybe if we move things around, you can get them to be all the same color. And then you add this on top, and now it's much more stable being held on 4 studs instead of 2. So yeah, and then if you hold this arm at this angle, you're able to hold on to the monster thingy without it falling down. So yeah, here's what this whole thing looks like with Albert sitting inside it. I wish the angle was not, I wish that we could angle him up, not pointing down, but that's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things. So here's a look at it from all angles. again, when I saw just the base for this thing, I thought it was very uninteresting. But then when you add this stuff to it, it makes it a lot more interesting and exciting and useful. So yeah, here's a look on the top and the bottom. So that's pretty cool. Let's have a final look at the car itself, car slash spaceship. So again, with the nice windshield piece, cockpit inside, fits one person. Here's a look from the top, front. I really like these transparent pieces, by the way. They work really well. There's a reference to classic LEGO space here. That's nice too. And yeah, from the bottom, there's a bunch of funky colors that would not show up in a real life spaceship. But of course, this is LEGO Dreamzzz, where everything is built out of LEGO, and part of the culture of LEGO is these funky colors. So I guess it kind of makes sense. Plus the fact that it's hollow from underneath allows some light to get through. So you could use that in your own builds. So now it's time to answer the big question. Is this worth $30 US or $40 Canadian? Well, if we just look at the price per piece ratio, it's pretty good, especially in the US. But on the other hand, a lot of the pieces in this set are these tiny little 1x1 pieces like these, or these tiny Technic pins, which are not very valuable. That's just objective. Like you can get these pieces for like 1 cent or 2 cents. So you can't just look at this number and say, oh, it's 350 pieces, so it should be $35. Instead, you need to look at the volume of stuff. As Jang likes to say, Jang is a very famous LEGO YouTuber and reviewer, for those who don't know. And I do agree with that idea of looking at the volume of stuff. So is this, with the Mr. Oz, of course, minifigure, so we have to look at all this stuff here and ask, is this worth $30 US or $40 Canadian? I think the answer is yes, but not, I'm not going to say it's outstanding value. I'd say the value is okay. You do get a 3-in-1 build, so that adds value in my opinion. You don't just get one thing. You do get the car to start with. If it was just the car and didn't have all these extra parts, then I would like this car to be $15 US, $20 Canadian, compared to like the Speed Champions cars that are a little bit better and they're licensed. So this car is neither of those, so I would not expect it to retail for much more than that. The figures, this figure, I would give it like this figure could be a collectible minifigure. It has like nice accessories, nice printing, and so on. So I'm willing to assign it that value. This figure has a nice torso, but everything else about it is pretty standard, not anything extraordinary. So these are two figures, but arguably you could consider these as both regular figures. You give this guy this accessory, but I would not consider this to be a regular minifigure. So I'd consider this to be like half a minifigure or 1/3 of a minifigure, just in my personal opinion. So keeping that in mind, I think that there is some value to the set. There's of course this monster looking thing with some interesting pieces, including these wings. So of course, when I look at value, I always look at how I can reuse these parts in my own creations. This is definitely useful. This piece here, I like to have it in this color. I like to have many more of these. These white wheels are useful. They might get dirty with time, but like if you play indoors, if you're not rough with them, you're not going outside in the dirt, they should be fine. So these to me, they're certainly useful. I could use them to make my own custom space creations. So that's pretty cool. And we do get a bunch of smaller useful pieces like this piece here and a bunch of others that I won't point out one by one, but you get the idea. There's also some nostalgia bait for the adult collectors here. So you have here a reference to classic space with the traditional LEGO smiley. You have here the classic space logo here and here. So there is like a wink and a nod to the adult collectors or to parents of children who enjoyed LEGO space when they were children back in their day. So yeah, all these are like nice little tidbits that add to the value. The other thing that also adds to the value is the fact that there's a TV show that you could watch online. The first season was available to everyone for free. I hope they will do the same for the second season and just make it publicly available to everyone on YouTube. So you could actually watch the story and reenact it or make your own version of it. So that making the TV series, animation, the voice actors and all that adds to the budget. So taking all that in mind, I think this set has a reasonable value. If you find it, I've seen lots of LEGO Dreamzzz set get discounted to 20% in my local area, so on Amazon, so very likely you'll be able to get this 20% off or maybe even 30% off in the near future, and that would make it even a better deal. But if you want it now, you can't wait. It's not a ripoff. Like I say this often, I often find myself repeating the same thing for price and value, but that's just because I usually pick sets that I'm interested in, that have something about them that interests me, and I'm not going to pick something that's obviously a ripoff like the X-Men Jet, because that one, like $100 for 300 pieces or something like that, that one just does not make sense to me, not even a little bit. So I'm not going to even consider it for a review unless LEGO sends one to me for free, and in that case I will still knock them on the price. So I'm recording this part after I finished the main part of the video, where now I'm going to look at the instructions, both the PDF instructions as well as the 3D ones, and I'll show you why in a moment. That's after I've done all the builds. So these instructions are really beautiful. They have art that we have not seen from LEGO in such a long time. So really nice to see that LEGO is going back to this, at least a little bit. There are no building phases, however. There's nothing that tells you bag 1 is going to build you this, bag 2 is going to build you that. It just tells you open bag 1, and then we have here Jayden yawning, and it tells us how to put him together. It's pretty obvious. And then in his dream, it's about to turn into a nightmare. We get to build this thing. So this is the PDF version of the instructions, and that one looks pretty cool in of itself, but I'll show you something even more impressive. So for the 3D version of the instructions, you do have to, they put you through these steps. You have to build this first one, and then these are now locked. You have to finish the build for the first one before you can pick one of these options. And I remember starting with this one first, and then I did this one in the middle. So here is the part list, which is also visible in the application. So that's pretty cool to see. You see the part, its number, as well as its shape and color. Very useful information to get. And I like the way it's all displayed here. So that's pretty nice. But for now, we're going to go back and do the first build. I'll show you what this looks like if you were to use the instructions. So you have this nice animation. It's reminiscent of what the PDF offers, but I think it's even better. You can see the quality there got upgraded to HD towards the very end. I have Jayden yawning. There's supposed to be music playing in the background, but it isn't for whatever reason. And even if it was, I would not be able to play it due to copyright reasons, most likely. So yeah, the unicorns on the Jayden minifigure here are colored as opposed to like having fewer colors on the actual Lego piece. So the Lego piece is simplified, but nevertheless, it's a nice representation. So yes, just like in the PDF we build Jayden, he starts falling asleep. Now he's walking into a nightmare. And then this monster thingy, oh, I didn't realize it was assembled upside down. I assembled it right side up. So I'm just skipping through the steps. I want to minimize the use of the instructions as much as I can. But yeah, I got this build basically right, except I had it like not upside down, and the whole thing works just the way you would expect. And the monster thing attacks Jayden. So you can see it's much more stylized in the cartoon versus the Lego build that they ask you to make. Meanwhile, Mr. Oz is sleeping, and notice the references to Classic Space, the coffee mug there. There's Albert. There's also references to a real-life Lego NASA set right there. So that's pretty cool. You see that Mr. Oz recognizes Jayden is being taken away, and he has an idea for what to do about it. And it just tells us put these pieces together. Of course, you can realize that this is going to be the car. I'll skip through. Okay, I'll skip through to this part because I want to focus on the storytelling. Yeah, so basically, you see that he is commanding these pieces to be put together using some kind of force. He borrowing the force from Star Wars, or actually he's using dream crafting, which is what they call the force in LEGO Dreamzzz, just to differentiate. It's kind of the same idea. So that's a pretty nice looking graphic right there, and it breaks the monotony because you're basically just adding pieces one after the other, and they're like, oh, here's something to take a break, get to enjoy the animation. So for this set in particular, if you are going to use the instructions, I would recommend using the virtual instructions just because of the nicer animations. That's really something you don't see in most LEGO sets these days. So moving on, just adding more stuff to the car. Alright. Okay, so the car is done, and now he's driving. Oh, but he hits a rock. Oh no, what are we gonna do now? Let's find out. Albert to the rescue. This city here, I'm wondering, is it a reference to Ninjago or Monkey Kid? Let me know in the comments down below. It looks pretty familiar, having like this big tall shape like that. And what are these realms here? Is this Lego Castle? It looks a lot like a medieval theme that Lego has done in the past. So that's something to think about. Yeah, Albert is very simple to put together. Apparently he's the one who's carrying the wrench canonically. So now we're done with the first two bags, which is basically the car, the monster thingy, and the three figures, all three of them, or 2.5 of them. So that is done. Get that nice little animation, and if we click next again, it's going to ask us to pick one of these options. So I will go in the order that I selected when actually doing the build. I'll take the green one first. So let's see here. It looks like we skip a bunch of like how we get to this place, but eventually the idea is that at some point we just go from a regular car into this. I thought they would tell the story about that, but apparently they don't. Let's just confirm. Okay, so it's just building, 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 building. And it tells you here, this icon says basically don't shoot this into someone's eye, which I do agree with. Be careful with these stud shooters. Alright, and we got a final animation. We're shooting the bad guy. And what happens to Jayden? Does he get rescued? Well, maybe not, so it's actually up to you to figure out what happens there. It's kind of like a cliffhanger ending. And if we go on this one, is it going to be any different? No, it just shows that the vehicles are arriving to save Jayden. There's not much to see about, like, how did we go from regular car to this? That's not explained. So they do tell you here, take off like the wheels from the car and then reassemble these things. I'll just skip to the next animation, which is probably going to be the last one. Okay, so now here it's an alternative rescue scenario, which I think is a little bit more obvious what's going on here. We just grab the bad guy, and then Albert grabs Jayden, and he gets saved, and everyone lived happily ever after. Alright, so that sums up my look at the instructions, which I usually do not look at all. But here, because there's so much animation and story behind it, I thought that it would be worth it to have a look. It's really well done. The animations, they are super gorgeous. It's really innovative. It's something that we've not seen from LEGO a lot, especially not recently. So I really do like the animations, especially at the beginning. Like these ones here, they really set the context. They really set you in the mood to tell the story as you're building. So that's really nice in my opinion. And as for the building experience itself, this was a very simple playset. Everything was obvious. I did look at the 3D view for the various components, the car and the rocket, or whatever you want to call it, and the terrain vehicle as well. So apparently when you go back, it locks these again until you finish. But this one is not locked because apparently we hit the check mark. I'm not sure why that one is locked and this one isn't. But basically, by looking at the 3D view, you're able to figure out how all these things come together. The build experience was pretty nice. There was one interesting building technique that I learned, and that's putting these two wheels together, or this tiny little rocket thing. So that's something I learned. I've never seen that before. The angles used here to put all the wheels together so that they're like all lined up on a flat surface. That's something that's new to me. So I did learn something from this build as always. Maybe not as much as some of the other sets, but still, learning something is always good. And I'll take what I've learned and use that in my own custom creations. So that sums up my thoughts on this set, the very first Dreamzzz set that I have built, and I really did enjoy it. The stickers were a little bit lacking. They were not like done properly, but that's a relatively minor nitpick because the stickers don't make or break this particular set, and you can leave most of them off and it will still be okay. So yeah, it's a nice set to get. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.